Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled out of the plasma conduit access panel. The repair job on the New Horizon trading station was taking longer than expected. The conduit had been acting up for weeks, causing power fluctuations throughout the medical bay. Just a few more adjustments, Jake muttered to himself, reaching back into the narrow space with his plasma torch. The blue flame flickered as he worked on the damaged connection point. Jake had been working as a mechanic on the New Horizon for 3 years now. The station was one of the first places where humans and aliens worked together after first contact. It was not always easy, but Jake liked the challenge. The alien technology was strange and interesting. Plus, the pay was good. The Zalani were the newest species to join the station. They looked almost human, but with 4 arms and blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Their eyes were large and violet, and they moved with a grace that Jake found fascinating to watch. A sharp pain shot through Jake's hand as a spark from the torch caught his skin. "Damn it!" he yelled, pulling his hand back quickly. The plasma torch clattered to the floor as Jake examined his burned palm. The skin was red and blistered, and it hurt like hell. Jake knew he needed medical attention. The burn was not life-threatening, but plasma burns could get infected easily. He picked up his tools and headed to the medical bay, cursing under his breath. The medical bay doors slid open with a soft hiss. Jake expected to see Dr. Linda Ross, the human head of medical, but the bay seemed empty except for one figure near the supply cabinets. Lyra Veltar turned when she heard Jake enter. She was one of the Zalani nurses who had joined the station 2 months ago. Jake had seen her around but had never really talked to her. Her blue skin had patterns of darker blue that seemed to move slowly across her surface. Her 4 arms moved independently as she organized medical supplies. "Oh," Lyra said in her soft, musical voice. "Are you hurt?" Her standard was good, but she spoke carefully, like she was thinking about each word. Jake held up his burned hand. "Plasma torch got me. Nothing serious, but I should get it looked at." Lyra's large violet eyes focused on his injury. She moved closer, and Jake noticed she smelled like flowers mixed with something clean and medicinal. "Dr. Ross is at a meeting with the station commander. I can help you." Jake nodded. "That would be great, thanks." Lyra guided Jake to one of the treatment beds. Her touch was gentle but sure as she examined his hand. Jake found himself watching her face as she worked. There was something peaceful about her expression, like she truly cared about healing people. "This will hurt for a moment," Lyra warned as she cleaned the wound. Jake winced but stayed still. Her 4 hands worked together in a way that seemed impossible to Jake. 2 hands held his steady, while the other 2 cleaned and treated the burn. "You work with dangerous things," Lyra observed as she applied a healing gel to his palm. "Are you not afraid?" Jake laughed. "Fear keeps you alive in my job, but you cannot let it stop you from doing what needs to be done." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "That is wise. On my world, we say that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it." "Smart people, your folks," Jake said, watching as she wrapped his hand with a bioactive bandage that would help the healing process. Lyra's skin seemed to brighten slightly at the compliment. "The gel will help the pain go away in a few hours. Keep the bandage dry for 2 days, then come back and I will check it." Jake flexed his fingers experimentally. The pain was already starting to fade. "Thanks. You did a great job. Better than some human doctors I have been to." Lyra's violet eyes widened slightly. "I am honored by your trust. Will you—" She paused, seeming to search for the right words. Will you accept my care and protection while you heal? Jake was looking at his datapad, checking his work schedule for the next day. He only half heard her question. It sounded formal, like some kind of medical protocol. Sure thing, he said, absently. Yes, dear. The moment the words left his mouth, everything changed. Lyra gasped and stepped back as if Jake had struck her. Her blue skin suddenly erupted in patterns of brilliant light. Lines of gold and silver raced across her arms and face like living lightning. Her eyes went wide with shock. "What did you say?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Jake looked up from his datapad, alarmed by her reaction. "I just said yes." "What is wrong?" Before Lyra could answer, other Zalani staff members came running into the medical bay. Jake had not even known there were others nearby. They saw Lyra glowing and began making excited chittering sounds that Jake did not understand. Two of them approached Jake and actually bowed. Jake stood up quickly, confused and a little scared. "Hey, what is going on here?" Lyra was backing away. Toward the wall, her four hands pressed against her chest. The glowing patterns on her skin were starting to fade, but they left her looking pale and shaken. "Lyra, are you sick? Do you need help?" Jake took a step toward her, but she held up one hand to stop him. "You accepted," she whispered. "You said the words. You accepted my offer." "What offer?" "I just said yes to medical care." The medical bay doors opened again and Dr. Linda Ross walked in. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She stopped short when she saw the scene before her. "What in the world is going on in my medical bay?" she demanded. The Zalani staff members were still chittering excitedly. Lyra looked like she might faint. Jake stood in the middle of it all, completely lost. One of the Zalani, an older male with deep blue skin, approached Dr. Ross. He spoke in heavily accented standard. "Doctor, this human has accepted a life bond with Nurse Veltar. We must inform the council immediately." Dr. Ross stared at Jake, then at Lyra, then back at Jake. "He did what?" Jake felt the blood drain from his face. "Life bond? What the hell is a life bond?" Lyra finally found her voice. She looked at Jake with those large violet eyes, and he could see fear and something else in them. Something that looked almost like hope. "Among my people," she said quietly, "when a female offers care and protection to a male, and he accepts with the ritual words, it creates a sacred bond between them. A bond of mates." Jake's knees went weak. He sat down hard on the treatment bed. "Mates? As in married?" "Bonded for life," the older Zalani confirmed solemnly. "It is our most sacred tradition." Jake stared at Lyra, who was still glowing faintly. Her skin patterns seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. He realized that his casual, joking response had just changed both of their lives forever. Dr. Ross was already reaching for her communicator. "I need to contact Ambassador Price immediately. And someone get Captain Carter down here." Jake looked at his bandaged hand, then at Lyra's frightened face. 20 minutes ago, his biggest worry had been fixing a plasma conduit. Now, apparently, he was married to an alien he barely knew. "Yes, dear," he whispered to himself. "Why did I have to say yes, dear?" 2 hours later, Jake sat in the station's main conference room, feeling like his world had turned upside down. The room was full of important people, all talking about him like he was not there. Captain Roy Carter paced behind his chair, looking angry. Ambassador Helen Price sat across from him, her face tight with worry. "This is a disaster," Ambassador Price said for the third time. "We have spent months building trust with the Zalani. One careless comment could ruin everything." Jake wanted to disappear. "I did not know. How was I supposed to know that saying, 'Yes, dear,' would start some alien marriage ritual?" Captain Carter stopped pacing and glared at him. "That is exactly the problem, Martinez. You should have learned about their culture before working around them." "I fix machines, Captain. I do not usually need to know about alien dating customs to repair plasma conduits." Dr. Ross spoke up from her seat at the end of the table. Blaming. "Jake will not fix this situation. We need to understand what we are dealing with." The conference room door opened, and Lieutenant Paul Garcia entered with a Zalani Jake had never seen before. This alien was much older than the others Jake had met, with darker blue skin marked by intricate silver patterns. The alien moved slowly, but with great dignity. "This is Elder Zephyr Nalvos," Lieutenant Garcia announced. "He arrived on the morning transport from the Zalani homeworld." The elder bowed slightly to the group, then sat down across from Jake. His violet eyes studied Jake with what seemed like curiosity rather than anger. "I am honored to meet the human who has bonded with young Lyra," Elder Nalvos said in perfect standard. His voice was deep and warm. Ambassador Price leaned forward. "Elder, we need to understand this situation. Can the bond be broken? We do not want to cause offense." But Mr. Martinez did not understand what he was agreeing to. Elder Nalvos was quiet for a long moment. "The life bond is sacred to our people, Ambassador. It has existed for thousands of years. When a female offers protection and care, and a male accepts with the proper words, their souls become linked." Jake felt sick to his stomach. "But I did not mean it that way. I was just being polite. Intent matters less than words in this case, young human. Lyra offered her protection as her heart commanded. You accepted. The bond was formed in that moment." Dr. Ross asked, "What exactly does this bond mean? What are the implications?" The elder folded his 4 hands on the table. "The bonded pair can sense each other's emotions. They share strength when one is weak. They are committed to each other's welfare for life. To break such a bond would be to dishonor both individuals and their families." Captain Carter slammed his hand on the table. "So you are telling me that my mechanic is now married to one of your nurses because of a misunderstanding?" "Marriage is not quite the right word," Elder Nalvos said calmly. "But yes, they are bound together. Among my people, this bond is considered more sacred than what you humans call marriage." Jake felt like the room was spinning. "What if I refuse? What if I just say no and walk away?" The elder's expression grew sad. "That is your choice, Jake. Martinez. But to reject a bond after accepting it would mark both you and Lyra as dishonored. She would never be able to form another bond. Her family would be shamed. And your people's relationship with mine would suffer greatly." Ambassador Price rubbed her temples like she had a headache. "So our options are, Jake honors this accidental bond, or we risk a diplomatic incident that could affect human Zalani relations across known space." "I am afraid that is accurate, Ambassador." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the busy docking bays of the trading station. Ships from a dozen different worlds came and went. Just this morning, his biggest worry had been whether he had enough spare parts for the plasma conduit repair. Now he was apparently responsible for interstellar diplomacy. "Where is Lyra now?" Jake asked without turning around. "She is in her quarters," Dr. Ross answered. She has been there since the incident. The other Zalani staff say she is too emotional to work. Elder Nalvos spoke softly. The bond affects the female more strongly at first. She can feel your confusion and fear. It causes her pain. Jake turned back to face the group. She can feel what I am feeling? Yes, as you will learn to feel her emotions in time. The bond grows stronger with acceptance and weaker with resistance. This is insane, Jake muttered. I do not even know her. We have never even had a real conversation. Yet she chose to offer you protection, the elder observed. Zalani females do not make such offers lightly. She must have seen something in you that called to her heart. Ambassador Price stood up. Elder, what would it take to resolve this situation peacefully? If Jake were to honor this bond, what would be required? He would need to travel to our homeworld to meet Lyra's family and undergo the traditional ceremonies. He would need to learn our ways and prove his commitment to her welfare. Captain Carter laughed bitterly. So I lose my best mechanic to an alien marriage ceremony? Perfect. Captain, Jake said quietly. I never asked for this. I know, Martinez. But like it or not, you are in it now. Jake looked around the room, at all the faces watching him. These people were depending on him to make a choice that would affect more than just his own life. The weight of responsibility felt crushing. Can I talk to her? Jake asked. To Lyra, I mean. If we are supposed to be bonded or whatever, should we not at least discuss this? Elder Nalvos smiled for the first time since entering the room. That is a wise suggestion. Perhaps you should learn about each other before making any final decisions. Dr. Ross nodded. I can arrange for you to meet in a neutral location. The Medical Bay Lounge might work. Jake felt a strange sensation in his chest. It was like a flutter of nervousness, but different somehow. Warmer. What was that? The elder's smile widened. That was Lyra's hope. She knows you are considering speaking with her. She can tell what I am thinking? Not thoughts, but emotions. And only when they are strong. The bond allows mates to support each other through difficult times. Ambassador Price gathered her papers. Very well. Jake, you will meet with Lyra to discuss this situation. Elder, we appreciate your guidance in this matter. We want to handle this correctly. I understand, Ambassador. These matters of the heart are never simple, even when they begin simply. As the meeting broke up, Jake found himself alone with Dr. Ross. She put a hand on his shoulder. Jake, I know, this is overwhelming. But I have been watching the Zalani since they arrived. Lyra is a good person. She cares deeply about helping others. If this had to happen to someone, it could have been much worse. Jake sighed. I just keep thinking about how I was complaining about a boring day this morning. I would give anything to have that boring day back. Maybe this will not be as bad as you think. Strange things have happened to people that turned out well. Jake looked out the window again. A Zalani transport ship was docking at one of the smaller bays. What if I actually like her? What if this crazy situation actually works out? Then you will have quite a story to tell your grandchildren. Jake laughed despite everything. Assuming I survive long enough to have grandchildren, I am still not sure what I have gotten myself into. An hour later, Jake stood outside the Medical Bay Lounge trying to work up the courage to go inside. He could feel that strange fluttering sensation in his chest again. It was stronger now, mixed with what felt like nervousness that was not quite his own. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Lyra sat at a small table near the window, her 4 hands folded in her lap. She looked up when he entered, and her skin brightened slightly. "Hello, Jake," she said softly. "Hi, Lyra. I think we need to talk." 3 weeks later, Jake found himself on a small diplomatic ship called the Harmony, traveling toward the Zalani homeworld. The ship was cramped, with only basic quarters and a tiny common area. Captain Roy Carter had not been happy about losing his best mechanic, even temporarily, but Ambassador Price had convinced him it was necessary for diplomatic relations. Jake shared the ship with Lyra, navigator Lisa Chang, and a small diplomatic crew. The journey would take almost a month through hyperspace, and Jake was already feeling trapped. The ship's quarters were so small that he and Lyra had to share a living space, though they had separate sleeping areas. On the 5th day of travel, Jake woke up from a strange dream. He had been walking through a crystal city under a purple sky, but it had not felt like his dream. The emotions in it were too different, too gentle and sad. He found Lyra in the common area, looking out at the swirling colors of hyperspace through the small viewport. Her skin was dim, showing darker patterns that seemed to move slowly across her arms. "Did you have trouble sleeping?" Jake asked, settling into the chair across from her. Lyra looked at him with those large violet eyes. I'm sorry if my dreams disturbed you. I have been remembering my home world. Sometimes the memories are strong." Jake realized that the crystal city from his dream must have been her memory. "You mean I was seeing your thoughts?" "Not thoughts exactly. Feelings and images. The bond grows stronger when we are close to each other for long periods." She paused, seeming uncertain. "Does it frighten you?" Jake considered the question. A few weeks ago, the idea of sharing someone else's dreams would have terrified him, but experiencing Lyra's memories had been surprisingly peaceful. "It is strange, but not scary. Your world looks beautiful." Lyra's skin brightened slightly. "It is. The crystal spires catch the light of our 3 moons and throw rainbows across the sky. My family's home is in the medical district, where the buildings are grown rather than built." "Grown?" "We use special crystals that respond to biological patterns. A master grower can shape a building over many years, making it perfect for its purpose." Lyra's voice became wistful. "I had hoped to become a grower myself before I chose the healing arts." Jake found himself genuinely curious. "Why? Did you change your mind?" Lyra was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft and sad. "My first mate was injured in a mining accident. I could not heal him. I decided then that I needed to learn everything I could about helping others." Jake felt a stab of pain that was not his own. "Your first mate?" "Kyle Venn. We were bonded for 2 years before the accident. He was caught in a collapse in the deep mines. I held him as he died, wishing I knew how to save him." The pain Jake felt through their connection was sharp and deep. He understood now why Lyra had been so careful and gentle when treating his burn. She had lost someone she loved because she could not heal him. "I am sorry," Jake said simply. "That must have been terrible." It was. But it taught me that every life is precious. Every person who comes to me for healing deserves everything I can give them. She looked at Jake directly. "That is why I offered you protection, not because of any ritual or custom, but because you were hurt, and I wanted to help." Jake felt something shift inside him. For the first time since the bonding incident, He was seeing Lyra not as a problem to be solved, but as a person with her own history and pain. "Tell me more about your world," Jake said. "What is it like growing up there?" Lyra's eyes brightened and her skin patterns became more animated. She told him about her childhood in the Crystal Cities, about the great libraries where knowledge was stored in living memory crystals, about the gardens where food and medicine were grown together in perfect harmony. Jake found himself sharing stories of Earth in return. He told her about the crowded cities where he grew up, about learning to fix things with his hands, about the sky full of stars that had called him to space. "Humans seem to fix things that are broken," Lyra observed. "It is a useful gift." And Zelani seemed to grow things and heal things. Maybe that is why the bond happened. Maybe we complete each other somehow. Lyra's skin flushed with warm gold patterns. "That is a beautiful thought." Over the following days, Jake began to understand the bond better. He could feel Lyra's emotions most strongly when they were intense. Her happiness felt like warm sunshine in his chest. Her sadness was like a gentle rain. Her fear, which came, sometimes in the middle of the night, felt like ice water in his veins. But he also learned that the bond worked both ways. When Jake felt frustrated or angry, Lyra would become agitated. When he was happy or calm, she relaxed. They were learning to balance each other's emotional states. On the 10th day of travel, the ship suddenly shook violently. Alarms began blaring throughout the small vessel. Navigator Chang's voice came over the intercom. "All passengers, secure yourselves immediately. We are under attack by raiders." Jake felt his heart start racing. Through the bond, he could feel Lyra's fear spike sharply. He grabbed her hand without thinking. "Stay close to me," he said. "I know this is scary, but we will get through it." Another impact shook the ship. The lights flickered, and Jake heard the distinctive whine of weapons fire outside the hull. Navigator Chang appeared in the common area, moving quickly. "The raiders have disabled our engines. They are trying to board us." Jake stood up, his mind already working on the problem. "What kind of raiders? What do they want?" "Probably slavers. They take people and sell them on the outer worlds." Jake felt a surge of protective anger that surprised him. The thought of anyone hurting Lyra made him furious. "What can we do?" "Not much. This is a diplomatic ship, not a warship. We have basic shields, and that is all." Lyra stood up, her forearms moving in a pattern Jake had never seen before. "I can help. My people know the old ways of fighting before we became peaceful." Jake stared at her. "You know how to fight?" "All Zelani learn. Basic combat skills. We may be healers, but we can defend ourselves when necessary." The ship shook again, and they heard the sound of hull breaches. The raiders were cutting their way inside. Jake made a quick decision. "Lisa, where is the ship's toolkit?" "Emergency. Locker, panel 7. "Why?" "Because I have an idea. Lyra, can you really fight?" Her skin patterns shifted to deep red and orange. "Yes, but I will need your help." Jake felt a strange confidence flow through him. Part of it was his own determination, and part of it was Lyra's courage mixing with his through their bond. Together they were stronger than either could be alone. They worked together quickly. Jake used his engineering skills to create improvised weapons from the ship's repair tools. Lyra used her 4 arms to handle multiple tasks at once, moving, with a grace and speed that amazed him. When the raiders finally broke through the hull, they found Jake and Lyra waiting for them. Jake had rigged the corridor with improvised electrical traps. Lyra had positioned herself where her 4 arms could attack from multiple angles. The fight was brief but intense. The raiders had expected an easy target, not a human engineer, and a Zilani healer working together like a perfect team. Jake's traps slowed them down, and Lyra's combat skills finished the job. When it was over, Jake and Lyra stood together in the damaged corridor, both breathing hard. Jake realized he was still holding her hand. "We did it," he said, amazed. Lyra's skin was glowing with bright patterns of victory and relief. "Yes, we did it together." Jake looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since the bonding incident. She was not just an alien who had accidentally trapped him in some strange ritual. She was brave and skilled and caring. She had lost someone she loved and dedicated her life to helping others, and somehow, impossibly, she was his. "Lyra," Jake said softly, "I think I am starting to understand this bond." She squeezed his hand gently. "I think I am too." Navigator Chang appeared around the corner, looking relieved to find them both alive. "The raiders are retreating. Good work, you two. I have never seen teamwork like that." Jake smiled, still looking at Lyra. "Neither have I." For the rest of the journey to the Zilani homeworld, things were different between them. They talked for hours each day, sharing stories and dreams. Jake learned to appreciate Lyra's gentleness and wisdom. Lyra began to understand Jake's humor and determination. The bond between them grew stronger, but it no longer felt like a trap. It felt like a gift. When the Harmony finally dropped out of hyperspace near the Zilani homeworld, Jake stood beside Lyra at the viewport, looking down at the beautiful crystal city she had shown him in her dreams. "Are you ready for this?" Lyra asked quietly. Jake squeezed her hand. "With you? I think I am ready for anything." Jake had never seen anything like the Zilani homeworld. As their ship descended through the purple-tinted atmosphere, he watched in amazement as the crystal cities grew larger below them. Tall spires twisted up from the ground like living things, catching and reflecting the light of 3 moons that hung in the alien sky. "It is more beautiful than your memories showed me," Jake said to Lyra as they prepared to land. Lyra's skin patterns showed nervousness mixed with pride. "I hope my family will think the same of you." The landing platform was crowded with Zilani, waiting to greet them. Jake could see that many of them had the same general build as Lyra, but their skin patterns and colors varied widely. Some had deep blue skin like Lyra, others were pale green or silver. All of them had those large violet eyes that seemed to see everything. Elder Nalvos met them at the bottom of the ship's ramp. "Welcome to Velnara, Jake Martinez. You honor us with your presence." Before Jake could respond, a group of Zilani approached them. At their head was an older female with intricate silver patterns covering her dark blue skin. Her 4 arms moved with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "This is Matriarch Iris Keltara, my clan mother," Lyra said softly. "She is not entirely pleased with our situation." Matriarch Keltara looked Jake up and down with obvious disapproval. When she spoke, her voice was cold and formal. "So, this is the human who has accidentally bonded with my daughter. You are smaller than I expected." Jake felt Lyra's embarrassment through their connection, but he also felt her quiet plea for him to be respectful. "Matriarch Keltara, I am honored to meet you. I know this situation is unusual, but I want to do what is right for Lyra and your family." "What is right?" the matriarch said sharply. would have been for you to learn our customs before making sacred promises you did not understand.
Mother, please, Lyra said quietly. It was my fault as much as his. I should have explained what I was offering.
A younger Zalani male stepped forward from the group. He was taller than Lyra, with patterns of gold and blue on his pale green skin. His manner was formal but not unfriendly. I am Marcus Vexnari, Lyra's former intended mate. He bowed slightly to Jake. I welcome you to our world, though I admit I am curious to see if a human can truly bond with one of our people. Jake felt a stab of jealousy and realized it was coming from both himself and from Lyra through their connection. Former intended mate? Before Lyra's first bonding with Kael'ven, our families had arranged for us to be joined. When Kael'ven died, it was assumed that Lyra and I would eventually form that bond. Marcus's voice was neutral, but Jake caught the hint of pain. Underneath, Elder Nalvos stepped in smoothly. These are matters for later discussion. First, Jake must undergo the traditional tests to prove his worthiness for the bond. Tests? Jake looked at Lyra, who had not mentioned any tests during their journey. Lyra's skin showed embarrassment. Again. I am sorry. I should have prepared you. There are 3 tests that any potential mate must pass: mental compatibility, emotional resonance, and physical harmony. Matriarch Keltara's expression grew stern. Tests that were created for our people, not for strange aliens who do not understand our ways. I will take the tests, Jake said firmly. If that is what it takes to prove my commitment to Lyra, then I will do it. The matriarch looked surprised by his determination. Elder Nalvos nodded approvingly. Very well. The testing will begin tomorrow at dawn. Tonight, you will be our guest in the clan house. The clan house was built into the side of a crystal formation, with rooms that seemed to grow naturally from the rock itself. Jake was given a small chamber next to Lyra's, connected by a curtained doorway. The furniture was elegant but strange, clearly designed for people with 4 arms. That night, Jake could not sleep. Through the bond, he could feel Lyra's worry and fear. Finally, he got up and pushed aside the curtain between their rooms. Lyra, are you awake? She was sitting by her window looking out at the 3 moons. Her skin was dim with worry patterns. I cannot stop thinking about the tests. What if you cannot pass them? What if my mother is right and humans are too different from us? Jake sat down beside her on the low bench. Then we will deal with that when it happens. But I am not going to give up without trying. The mental compatibility test is the most difficult. You will have to share consciousness with me through a memory crystal. It will show your deepest thoughts and feelings. Jake felt a flutter of nervousness. Will it hurt? No, but it will be intense. You will experience my memories and emotions as if they were your own, and I will experience yours. Jake took her hand, marveling again at how perfectly it fit with his, despite being so different. Lyra, there are things in my past that are not pretty. What if you see something you do not like? Lyra's skin patterns shifted to warm gold. Then I will understand you better. Is that not what bonding is for? To know each other completely? The next morning, Jake stood in the center of a large ceremonial chamber. Zalani from several clans had gathered to watch the testing. At the center of the room was a pillar of crystal that seemed to pulse with inner light. Elder Nalvos explained the process. You will each place one hand on the memory crystal. It will create a connection between your minds. The test is passed. If you can maintain that connection without rejection for 1 full minute. Jake looked at Lyra, who nodded encouragingly. Together, they approached the crystal. The moment Jake touched the smooth surface, the world exploded into sensation. He was suddenly experiencing Lyra's memories from her perspective. He felt her childhood joy at learning to heal small animals. He experienced her grief at losing Kael'ven as if it were his own loss. He felt her confusion and hope when the bond with Jake was formed. But he also felt Lyra experiencing his memories, his difficult childhood in Earth's crowded cities, his frustration with people who did not understand his love of fixing things, his loneliness in space, always moving from job to job without forming deep connections. The mental contact was overwhelming. Jake felt like he was drowning in emotions that were not his own. But through it all, he held on to one thought. He wanted to understand Lyra completely, no matter what it cost him. When the minute was over and they broke contact with the crystal, Jake staggered backwards. Lyra caught him with her forearms, her skin glowing brightly with patterns of joy and relief. "Well done," Elder Nalvos said. "I have rarely seen such a strong connection, even between our own people." Matriarch Keltara looked less pleased. 1 test passed, 2 remain. The emotional resonance test was simpler, but somehow more difficult. Jake and Lyra sat facing each other in a quiet room while Elder Nalvos monitored their life signs. "You must synchronize your emotional states," the Elder explained. "When one feels joy, the other must share it. When one feels sorrow, the other must comfort it. The test lasts for 10 minutes. Jake had thought this would be easy. They had been sharing emotions through the bond for weeks now, but doing it deliberately with the pressure of the test was much harder. Lyra began by projecting calm, peaceful feelings. Jake tried to match her emotional state, but his nervousness kept interfering. Through the bond, his anxiety made Lyra's calm falter, which made him more anxious. "Stop trying so hard," Lyra said softly. "Just let yourself feel what I feel." Jake closed his eyes and let go of his need to control the situation. Gradually, he began to feel Lyra's peace flowing through him. When she shifted to gentle happiness, he found himself smiling without knowing why. When she projected love and acceptance, he felt warm and safe. But then Marcus Vexenari entered the room to observe the test, and Jake felt a spike of jealousy that disrupted their harmony. Lyra's emotions wavered as she felt his reaction. "Focus on us," Lyra whispered. "Not on him." Jake looked into her violet eyes and remembered all the conversations they had shared during their journey. He thought about her gentleness, her courage, her dedication to healing others. The jealousy faded, replaced by growing affection for this remarkable person who had chosen him. Their emotional states synchronized perfectly for the remainder of the test. "Impressive," Marcus admitted grudgingly. "I did not expect a human to be capable of such emotional depth." The physical harmony test took place in a large open space with a polished floor. Jake and Lyra stood facing each other while traditional Zalani music played. "This is a bonding dance," Elder Nalvos explained. "Partners must move together in perfect synchronization. It represents the harmony that bonded mates must achieve in all aspects of life." Jake had never been much of a dancer, and he had certainly never tried to dance with someone who had 4 arms. But as the music began, Lyra took his hands and began to move. The dance was beautiful and complex. Lyra's 4 arms created patterns in the air while her feet moved in intricate steps. Jake struggled to follow her lead, stumbling occasionally. but always recovering. But as the dance continued, Jake began to understand its purpose. It was not just about matching movements. It was about trusting your partner completely, letting them guide you when you were lost, supporting them when they faltered. Jake stopped trying to memorize the steps and instead focused on Lyra. He let her lead him through the more complex movements, while supporting her balance with his strength during the difficult spins and lifts. The morning of the bonding ceremony, Jake woke to find Lyra already gone from their shared quarters. According to tradition, they were not supposed to see each other until the ceremony began. Jake felt strangely empty without her nearby presence. Through their bond, Elder Nalvos found Jake eating breakfast alone in the clan house dining area. The older Zalani looked pleased but also thoughtful. "How are you feeling, young Jake? Today is a significant day for both our peoples." Jake looked up from his meal of unfamiliar but delicious fruits. "What do you mean, both our peoples?" "Did you not know? You and Lyra are not the only human Zalani pair to form bonds recently. In the past few months, 3 other couples have found themselves in similar situations across different stations and colonies." Jake nearly choked on his fruit. "Other couples?" "A human doctor and a Zalani engineer on the Luna colony. A human trader and a Zalani botanist on the frontier world of New Eden. And just last week, a human diplomat and a Zalani artist on the embassy station." Elder Nalvos smiled. "It seems that when humans say yes, dear, to offers of care, it often triggers our bonding instincts. But that means this was not entirely an accident. When 2 species are meant to understand each other, fate finds a way. Your bond with Lyra may be the beginning of something much larger." Jake felt a mixture of excitement and responsibility. "Does Lyra know about the other couples?" "She does now. That is part of why the ceremony today is so important. You are not just joining your lives together. You are proving that humans and Zalani can truly bond as partners." A few hours later, Jake stood in the great ceremonial hall of Velnara. The crystal walls reflected and amplified the light of hundreds of Zalani witnesses. Representatives from several human colonies had arrived overnight to witness the ceremony. Jake wore traditional Zalani ceremonial robes adapted for his 2-armed form. They were made of a fabric that seemed to shimmer with its own light. He felt nervous but determined. Dr. Ellen Brooks, a human xenobiologist who had been studying the bond phenomenon, approached Jake before the ceremony began. "Jake, I need you to know what we have discovered about the human-Zalani bonding process. It creates new neural pathways in both partners that enhance empathy, cooperation, and problem-solving abilities. You are not just getting married. You are evolving." Jake stared at her. "Evolving?" "The bonds appear to be creating a new form of consciousness that combines the best qualities of both species. Human adaptability and creativity, combined with Zalani emotional depth and harmony." Before Jake could ask more questions, the ceremonial music began. The great doors at the far end of the hall opened, and Lyra appeared. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Lyra's ceremonial gown was made of living crystal that moved and flowed with her body. Her skin glowed with patterns more complex and beautiful than any Jake had seen before. She looked like a vision from a dream. But as she walked toward him, down the long aisle, Jake felt something through their bond that made him pause. Along with her joy and love, he sensed a deep sadness and fear. When Lyra reached the ceremonial platform where Jake waited, she looked into his eyes. Her voice was so soft that only he could hear. "Jake, I need to tell you something before we continue. Elder Nalvos had begun the opening words of the ceremony, but Jake held up his hand. "Wait, Lyra needs to speak." The hall fell silent. Hundreds of eyes focused on them. "Jake," Lyra said, her skin patterns showing distress, "I have been selfish. I let this bond happen because I was lonely after losing Kael'ven. I offered you protection not just from kindness, but because part of me hoped you would accept." Jake felt her guilt and shame through their connection. "Lyra, you did not choose this. You were trapped by my need and my people's customs. If you want to leave, I will find a way to release you from the bond. I would rather be alone than keep you against your will." The hall was completely silent. Jake could feel hundreds of people waiting for his response. Through the bond, he could feel Lyra's love for him, but also her willingness to sacrifice her own happiness for his freedom. Jake looked around the great hall. He saw Elder Nalvos watching him with wise eyes. He saw Matriarch Keltara, who had grown to respect him over the past days. He saw Marcus Vexnari, who had gracefully stepped aside. He saw the human representatives, including Ambassador Price, who had traveled all this way to witness the ceremony. But most of all, he felt Lyra's emotions through their bond. Her fear, her love, her willingness to let him go. Jake took Lyra's, 4 hands in his too. "Do you remember what you told me during our journey? You said that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it." Lyra nodded, tears starting to form in her violet eyes. "I was afraid when this bond first formed, afraid of losing my independence, my freedom, my humanity. But over these past weeks I learned something. Love is not about losing yourself. It is about becoming more than you could be alone." Jake's voice grew stronger as he continued. "You did not trap me, Lyra. You gave me the greatest gift I have ever received. You showed me that I could be part of something beautiful and meaningful. You taught me that caring for someone else does not make me weaker. It makes me stronger." Lyra's skin began to glow brighter, but her tears continued to fall. "I choose this bond," Jake said loudly enough for everyone in the hall to hear. "Not because I have to, but because I want to. Not because of tradition or diplomacy, but because I love you." The hall erupted in the chittering sounds of Zalani joy mixed with human applause. But Jake only had eyes for Lyra. "Are you certain?" she whispered. Jake smiled. "Yes, dear. I am absolutely certain." Lyra laughed through her tears, her skin blazing with patterns of pure happiness. "Then let us be bonded, not by accident, but by choice." Elder Nalvos completed the ceremony with tears of joy in his own eyes. When Jake and Lyra spoke their final vows to each other, the bond between them deepened into something permanent and beautiful. The celebration lasted long into the night. Jake found himself surrounded by well-wishers from both species. The other, human Zalani couples had arrived to meet them, and Jake was amazed to see how happy and natural they all seemed together. Later, as Jake and Lyra stood together on the balcony of the clan house looking up at the 3 moons, Lyra asked quietly, "Do you think we will be able to make this work? Human and Zalani trying to build a life together?" Jake put his arm around her, while her 4 arms encircled him. Through their bond, he could feel her contentment and his own deep peace. "I think we are going to be just fine. Better than fine, actually. I think we are going to be extraordinary." 6 months later, Jake stood in the medical bay of the New Horizons station. But everything had changed. The bay was now twice as large, with equipment designed for both human and Zilani use. Jake worked as the chief engineer for the new interspecies medical facility, while Lyra served as the head of patient care. Their success had led to similar projects throughout human space. The bonded couples were proving that humans and Zilani could work together in ways neither species could achieve alone. Jake was calibrating a new bioscanner when his communication device chimed. A message had arrived from Earth. "Jake, honey, this is your sister Anna. I know it has been a while since we talked, but I wanted you to know how proud I am of you. The news feeds are full of stories about the amazing work you and Lyra are doing together. I would love to meet my new sister-in-law when you next visit Earth. Also, Mom wants to know if Zilani eat Earth food because she is already planning a huge family dinner." Jake laughed, a sound that brought Lyra over to see what was so funny. "My family wants to meet you," Jake explained, showing her the message. Lyra's skin glowed with warm patterns. "I would like that very much. Do you think they will accept me? If they are smart, they will love you almost as much as I do." Lyra tilted her head in that way she did when she was thinking. "Jake, do you ever regret that day when you said yes, dear, to me?" Jake considered the question seriously. His life had been completely changed by those two simple words. He had left his old job, moved to an alien world for part of each year, learned to share his emotions with another person, and taken on responsibilities he had never imagined. But he had also found love, purpose, and a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. He had helped prove that different species could not only coexist, but thrive together. "Not for a single moment," Jake said, taking her hand. "It was the best mistake I ever made." Lyra smiled, her skin brightening with joy. "It was not a mistake, Jake. It was fate." As they stood together in their medical bay, watching human and Zilani staff work side by side to help patients from dozens of different worlds, Jake realized she was right. Some things were meant to happen, even when they began with a simple, joking phrase. "Yes, dear," Jake said softly, squeezing Lyra's hand. Her laughter, bright and musical, filled the medical bay like a promise of all the good things yet to come. 1 year after their bonding ceremony, Jake and Lyra faced their biggest challenge yet. They stood in the conference room of the New Horizons station, looking at a holographic display that showed star charts of unexplored space. Admiral Susan Hayes, the new head of Human Zilani Joint Operations, pointed to a cluster of systems on the far edge of known space. "We have received distress signals from this region, 3 different species all asking for medical help. There is some kind of plague spreading through their worlds." Jake studied the display. The affected systems were weeks away from the nearest medical facilities. "What kind of plague?" "Unknown. The transmissions are breaking up by the time they reach us. All we know is that it affects multiple species and spreads quickly." Dr. Ellen Brooks, who had become the leading expert on human-Zilani cooperation, stepped forward. "We need a medical team that can adapt to completely unknown situations. The bonded pairs have shown remarkable ability to solve problems that neither species could handle alone." Lyra's skin showed patterns of concern mixed with determination. "How many people are we talking about?" 3 worlds, each with populations in the millions. If this plague continues to spread, it could affect dozens of systems. Jake felt Lyra's immediate desire to help through their bond. Her healer's instincts would not let her ignore suffering, no matter how distant or dangerous. "What kind of support would we have?" Jake asked. Admiral Hayes manipulated the display, showing the location of nearby human and Zilani fleets. "We can give you a fully equipped medical ship with the latest technology from both our peoples. You would lead a team of 6 bonded pairs, plus support staff. Jake looked at Lyra. Through their connection, he could feel her excitement mixed with fear. This would be the biggest test yet of what humans and Zilani could accomplish together. "When do we leave?" Lyra asked. "The ship can be ready in 3 days, but I want you both to understand this is dangerous. We do not know what you will find out there. Some of the distress signals mentioned hostile reactions from infected populations." Jake felt a familiar surge of protective instinct. The thought of Lyra in danger still made him angry, even after all this time. But he also felt her calm confidence through their bond. She was not afraid of the challenge. "We will do it," Jake said firmly. "These people need help, and we are probably the best team for the job." 3 days later, Jake stood on the bridge of the medical ship Unity as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. The ship was a marvel of combined human and Zilani technology. Human engineering had provided speed and durability, while Zilani biosciences had created the most advanced medical facilities Jake had ever seen. The crew was equally impressive. 6 human-Zilani bonded pairs, each specializing in different aspects of medicine and crisis response. Jake served as the mission leader and chief engineer, while Lyra was the head medical officer. Dr. Rachel Kim and her Zilani partner, Sage Velnara, handled infectious diseases. Engineer Pete Santos and his mate Don Kiltess specialized in environmental hazards. The list went on, each pair bringing unique skills that made the whole team stronger. As they entered hyperspace, Jake found Lyra in the medical bay, preparing equipment they might need. "Nervous?" Jake asked, settling beside her. "Excited," Lyra replied, her skin glowing with anticipation. "We have never faced anything like this before. It will test everything we have learned about working together." Jake felt her enthusiasm through their bond, mixed with his own determination. Over the past year, they had discovered that their connection made them much more effective at solving complex problems. Jake's practical engineering mind, combined with Lyra's intuitive understanding of biological systems, created insights that neither could reach alone. "What do you think we will find out there?" Lyra was quiet for a moment, her 4 hands continuing to organize medical supplies. "Something that requires both human adaptability and Zilani healing knowledge. Why else would fate bring us together for this mission?" The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, the team worked together to prepare for every possible scenario. They practiced medical procedures, ran emergency drills, and shared knowledge between species. Jake was amazed at how naturally the bonded pairs worked together. Each couple had developed their own unique way of combining human and Zilani abilities. Some focused on the emotional support that helped patients heal faster. Others used the enhanced problem-solving that came from shared consciousness. When they finally arrived at the first affected system, Jake stood on the bridge looking down at a world that should have been green and blue, but instead showed patches of sickly yellow spreading across the continents. "Life signs?" Jake asked the sensor operator. "Massive die-offs in the yellow zones, but there are still large populations alive in the unaffected areas." Lyra joined Jake at the viewing port. Through their bond, he could feel her grief at seeing so much suffering. "We need to get down there," she said quietly. The first planet was inhabited by a species called the Korathi, who looked something like tall, thin humans with feathered crests instead of hair. Their cities were built into mountainsides, with elegant spiraling towers that reached toward the sky. But many of those towers were now empty and dark. Jake and Lyra took a shuttle down to the planet's surface, accompanied by Dr. Kim and Sage Velnera. They wore full environmental suits until they could determine if the plague affected humans or Zalani. The Karathi leader who met them was a female named High Singer Zarath. Her feathered crest was dulled with exhaustion, and her large eyes showed desperation. "You came," she said in accented standard. "We did not think anyone would answer our calls for help." "We are here to help," Lyra said gently. "Can you tell us about the sickness?" Zarath led them through the city to a medical facility. Jake was shocked by what he saw. Karathi lay on beds throughout the building, their skin showing the same sickly yellow patches they had seen from space. "It started 3 months ago," Zarath explained. "A few individuals in the outer settlements became sick. The yellow marks appeared on their skin, and they became aggressive, attacking anyone who came near them." Dr. Kim began taking readings with her medical scanner. "The aggressive behavior is interesting. Is it random, or do they target specific individuals? They seem to attack anyone who tries to help them. We lost many healers in the first weeks before we learned to stay away." Jake felt a chill of understanding. "It is targeting the helpers. The plague spreads by making victims hostile to medical treatment." Lyra's skin patterns showed alarm as she realized the implications. "That is why it has been so effective. Any species that tries to treat the sick gets infected by their victims." Sage Velnara, who had been quietly observing the patients, spoke up. "I am sensing something strange. The infected individuals are not truly hostile. They are terrified. Something is making them perceive helpers as threats." Jake looked at the suffering Karathi and felt his determination harden. "Then we need to figure out what is causing that fear and stop it." Over the following days, the team worked around the clock. Jake used his engineering skills to create protective barriers that let them study the infected safely. Lyra's healing abilities, enhanced by their bond, let her sense the emotional states of the victims, even through their aggression. Dr. Kim and Sage Velnara discovered that the plague was not a disease at all, but a microscopic parasite that affected the nervous system. The parasite made infected individuals perceive anyone trying to help them as a deadly threat. "It is brilliant in a horrible way," Dr. Kim explained during a team meeting. "The parasite ensures its own survival by making victims attack anyone who might cure them." Jake felt sick as he understood the full scope of the problem. How do we treat patients who will attack us if we get close enough to help them? That was when Lyra had an insight that could only have come from their bonded connection. She suddenly sat up straight, her skin glowing with excitement. "Jake, remember when we first met? You were injured and I helped you, but you did not fear me." "Right, because you were obviously trying to help. But these patients cannot see that helpers want to help them. The parasite makes them see threats instead." Lyra's patterns brightened. "What if we could change how they perceive us?" Jake felt understanding flow through their bond. "You mean make them see us as non-threatening somehow?" "More than that. What if we could make them see us as family?" Dr. Kim looked puzzled. "How would that work?" Lyra explained her idea. Using Zalani emotional projection techniques, combined with human psychological understanding, they could create a field that made infected patients perceive medical teams as loved ones rather than threats. It was a risky plan that required all the bonded pairs to work together, combining their enhanced abilities to project feelings of safety and love. Jake coordinated the technical aspects, while Lyra led the emotional projection. As they approached the first group of infected Karathi, Jake held his breath. Instead of attacking, the patients looked at them with recognition and relief. The yellow patches on their skin began to fade as the medical team administered the cure they had developed. Within hours, the first patients were completely healed. Word spread quickly through the Karathi population. Hope returned to their cities. The second world was completely covered in water. As the Unity approached the ocean planet, Jake looked down at endless blue seas broken only by small chains of islands. The water should have been clear and beautiful, but instead it had a murky, sick appearance. "The Aquari live underwater," Dr. Rachel Kim explained as the team prepared for their descent. "They breathe water like we breathe air. Their cities are built on the ocean floor." Lyra studied the readings from their sensors. "The plague seems to be affecting their water supply directly. The infected areas show high concentrations of the same parasites we found on the Karathi world." Jake felt worried through their bond. Treating patients underwater would be much more difficult than working on land. "How do we even get down there? None of us can breathe water." Engineer Pete Santos and his Zalani mate, Don Kiltess, had been working on this problem during their journey. Pete activated a holographic display showing their solution. "We have modified the shuttle with Zalani biofilters," Pete explained. "The ship can fill with water while keeping the air we need in special chambers. We can move through their cities while staying in our breathing environment." Dawn's 4 arms moved gracefully as she demonstrated how the system worked. "The biofilters will also protect us from the parasites in the infected water." Jake was impressed by their engineering, but he still felt nervous. What if something goes wrong? We would be trapped underwater with no way to reach the surface quickly. Lyra placed her hand on his arm. Through their bond, he felt her calm confidence. "We have faced difficult situations before. We will face this one together, too." The descent to the ocean floor took over an hour. Jake watched through the shuttle windows as they passed through layers of increasingly dark water. Strange fish swam past, some glowing with their own light. Finally, they reached the Aquari cities. Jake had never seen anything like them. Massive structures grew from the sea floor like underwater forests. The buildings seemed to be made from cultivated coral and sea plants, glowing with bioluminescent patterns that created a fairy tale landscape. But many of the structures were dark and empty. The plague had taken its toll here, too. An Aquari delegation met them at the edge of the main city. The water-breathing aliens looked like a cross between humans and dolphins, with sleek bodies, large eyes adapted for underwater vision, and gills along their necks. They moved through the water with fluid grace. Their leader was a female named Wave Singer Coralhigh. She communicated through a combination of sound patterns and water currents that the shuttle's translation system could barely understand. "Thank you for coming," the translation device said haltingly. "Our healers, afraid to help, the sick ones." Jake realized that the communication problems would make their job much harder. How could they treat patients if they could barely talk to their doctors? That was when Lyra had another breakthrough. She placed her hands on the shuttle's communication panel, her skin glowing with concentration. "Jake, I think I can use our bond to help with translation. The Aquari communicate through emotions as much as words. If I can project the right feelings, they might understand us better." Jake felt Lyra's plan through their connection. She wanted to use their emotional link to create a bridge between species that could speak beyond language barriers. "Try it," Jake said. Lyra began projecting feelings of friendship, concern, and desire to help through the shuttle's biosystems. The effect on the Aquari was immediate. Their body language changed, becoming more relaxed and trusting. Wave Singer. Coral High approached the shuttle more closely, her large eyes showing understanding. When she spoke again, her meaning came through much more clearly. "You bring healing hearts," she said, the words flowing more smoothly through the translator. "We feel your caring. Our people are dying, and we need your wisdom." Jake felt relief flow through him. They could communicate, which meant they could help. The Aquari led them deeper into their city, to a massive structure that served as their medical center. Jake was amazed by what he saw. The building was alive, with walls that pulsed gently, and corridors that adjusted their size to accommodate different numbers of people. But the beauty of the place was overshadowed by the suffering inside. Hundreds of Aquari floated in treatment areas, their sleek skin marked with the same sickly discoloration they had seen on the Karathi world. Unlike the land dwellers who had become aggressive, these patients seemed listless and afraid. "The plague affects each species differently," observed Sage Velnara. "The Karathi became hostile. These people become paralyzed by fear." Dr. Kim began taking readings with her waterproof medical equipment. "The parasites are the same, but they are interacting with different nervous systems. The Aquari response is to freeze rather than fight." Jake watched the suffering patients and felt his determination harden. Same result, though. They cannot accept help because the parasites make them afraid of treatment. Wave Singer Coral High confirmed his observation. "When we try to help them, they swim away. They hide in the deep trenches where we cannot reach them. Many have died alone in the darkness." Lyra's skin patterns showed deep sadness as she felt the emotional pain of the situation. "They are so afraid. I can sense their terror even from here." Jake squeezed her hand. "Then we help them the same way we helped the Karathi. We make them feel safe instead of afraid." But the underwater environment created new challenges. The emotional projection techniques that had worked on land needed to be adapted for water. The bonded pairs had to learn to work together while wearing breathing equipment and moving in 3 dimensions instead of 2. Dr. Kim and Sage Velnara took the lead in adapting their treatment methods. Pete and Dawn worked on creating safe spaces where they could treat patients without fear of the parasites spreading. The other bonded pairs each contributed their unique skills to the effort. Jake found himself coordinating the technical aspects while staying connected to Lyra's emotional guidance. Their bond had grown so strong that they could work together almost like one person with multiple sets of hands and different areas of expertise. The first attempt to treat infected Aquari was more difficult than their success with the Karathi. The underwater patients were so afraid that they scattered in all directions when the medical team approached, despite Lyra's emotional projections. "We need a different approach," Lyra said during a team meeting in their underwater base. "The Aquari do not just fear us as individuals. They fear abandonment. Being alone in the deep water is their greatest terror." Jake felt understanding flow through their bond. "So instead of approaching them as strangers offering help, we need to approach them as family returning home." The solution required all 6 bonded pairs to work together in a way they had never attempted before. Instead of individual emotional projections, they created a network of shared feelings that encompassed the entire treatment area. When they approached the infected patients this time, the Aquari did not flee. Instead, they swam toward the medical team with expressions of relief and recognition. Jake watched in amazement as the treatment began. The combination of Lyra's healing abilities, the medical expertise of the other bonded pairs, and the emotional safety net they had created together worked better than any of them had hoped. Within hours, the first group of patients was completely cured. Word spread through the underwater city faster than Jake would have thought possible. Healthy Aquari began bringing their infected family members to the treatment center. But the most remarkable thing was what happened next. As they worked, Jake began to notice that the Aquari were not just accepting treatment. They were learning from it. The water-breathing aliens were adapting the emotional projection techniques for their own use, creating healing methods that were uniquely suited to their aquatic environment. Wave singer Coral High approached Jake and Lyra after they had been working for 3 days straight. "You have given us more than healing," she said, her words flowing clearly through the translator now that they understood each other better. "You have shown us new ways to help each other. We will teach these methods to other Aquari cities." Jake felt pride and satisfaction flow through his bond with Lyra. They were not just curing the plague. They were helping entire civilizations develop better ways to care for their people. As they prepared to leave for the third and final world, Jake stood with Lyra in the shuttle bay, looking out at the glowing underwater city they were leaving. "Behind! One more world," Jake said. Lyra's skin glowed with determination mixed with exhaustion. The emotional projection work was draining, even with their bond to support her. "The hardest one," she replied quietly. "The distress signals from the third world stopped transmitting 2 weeks ago." Jake felt a chill of worry. "What do you think that means?" "I think it means we may be too late, or that whatever we find there will be worse than anything we have faced before." Jake pulled her close, feeling her tiredness and fear through their connection. "Then we better make sure we are ready for anything." As the Unity left the water world behind and jumped toward their final destination, Jake wondered what they would find waiting for them in the darkness of space. The third world was silent. As the Unity approached the planet, Jake stared at the sensor readings with growing unease. There were no communication signals, no energy signatures from cities, no signs of spaceship traffic. The world that had sent desperate pleas for help just weeks ago now seemed completely dead. "Are you picking up any life signs?" Jake asked the sensor operator. "Scattered readings across the surface, but they are weak and inconsistent. Whatever happened here, it happened fast." Lyra stood beside Jake, her skin showing worried patterns. Through their bond, he could feel her deep concern mixed with determination. "We have to go down there. Even if we are too late to help most of them, there might be survivors." Dr. Rachel Kim joined them at the sensor station. "The atmospheric readings show the same parasite concentrations we found on the other worlds, but much higher. This planet is saturated with the infection." Jake felt a chill of fear, both his own and Lyra's, through their connection. "What does that mean for us? Can our protective equipment handle that level of contamination?" Engineer Pete Santos looked up from his workstation. "The biofilters can protect us, but not for long periods. We would need to work in short shifts and decontaminate frequently." Dawn Kiltess, Pete's Zalani partner, added her own concerns. "The emotional projections that worked on the other worlds may not be effective here. If the parasite concentration is that high, it might overwhelm our ability to counter its effects." Jake looked around at the team of bonded pairs. They had successfully helped 2 worlds already, but this situation felt different, more dangerous, more desperate. "We knew this mission would be risky," Jake said finally. "These people called for help, and we are going to give it to them." We just need to be smarter about how we do it. The planet's surface was a nightmare landscape. What had once been a thriving world covered with cities and farmland was now a wasteland of sickly vegetation and abandoned structures. The sky had a yellowish tint that made everything look diseased. Jake led a small scouting team down in a heavily shielded shuttle. Besides himself and Lyra, he brought Dr. Kim and Sage Velnera, along with 2 security specialists in case they encountered hostile, infected individuals. The first city they investigated was completely empty. Streets that should have been filled with people were deserted except for the occasional piece of debris blown by the wind. Buildings stood open, as if their occupants had simply walked away in the middle of their daily activities. "This is strange," Dr. Kim observed as they moved through the empty streets. The other world showed signs of struggle. Here, it looks like everyone just disappeared. Lyra had been unusually quiet since they landed. Her skin patterns showed confusion and fear. "Jake, I am not sensing any emotions from this place. Usually I can feel something from any area where people live. Here, there is nothing." Jake felt worried through their bond. Lyra's empathic abilities had never failed them before. "What does that mean?" "I do not know. It is like the emotional atmosphere of this world has been drained away." They continued their search, moving from building to building. They found signs that people had lived here recently, meals left half-finished on tables, personal belongings scattered around homes, but no people, living or dead. It was Sage Velnara who made the first important discovery. Her 4 arms moved quickly as she adjusted her medical scanner outside what appeared to be a hospital. "I am detecting life signs," she announced. "Very faint, but definitely there. Underground, about 50 meters below us." Jake looked at the building above them. It was a standard medical facility, but like everything else on the planet, it appeared abandoned. "How do we get down there?" Jake asked. Dr. Kim found the answer when she discovered a hidden entrance behind the hospital. It led to an elevator that descended deep into the planet's crust. "This must be some kind of emergency shelter," she said as they rode the elevator down, built to protect people during disasters. When the doors opened, Jake gasped. The underground facility was enormous, stretching out farther than he could see. And it was full of people. But these were not the aggressive infected they had found. On the first world, or the fearful victims from the underwater planet, these people moved slowly and aimlessly like sleepwalkers. Their eyes were open but empty, as if no one was home inside their minds. "What happened to them?" Jake whispered. A voice answered from behind them. "The parasites did not make us hostile or afraid. They made us forget who we are." Jake spun around to see a figure approaching from the shadows. It was a member of the species they had come to help, but unlike the others, this one moved with purpose and spoke clearly. "I am Dr. Stone Path, Chief Medical Officer for this facility. I am one of the few who managed to resist the infection long enough to understand what it does to my people." Dr. Kim stepped forward. "We are here to help. We have successfully treated this plague on 2 other worlds." Dr. Stone Path looked at them with eyes that held both hope and despair. "This strain is different. It does not make the infected attack helpers or run from treatment. It makes them forget that they need help at all. They forget their families, their purposes, their very selves." Jake felt sick as he understood the implications. They cannot be treated because they do not remember that they are sick. Worse than that, they do not remember anything. They know how to perform basic functions like eating and walking, but they have no personalities, no desires, no connections to other people. Lyra's skin patterns showed deep sadness. That is why I cannot sense any emotions from this place. The infected people have no emotions left to feel. Dr. Stonepath led them deeper into the facility, showing them thousands of people who wandered aimlessly through the corridors. They looked healthy physically, but their minds were completely empty. "How have you managed to stay uninfected?" Sage Velnara asked. "I sealed myself in a protected laboratory when the infection first appeared. I have been working on a cure ever since, but without success. The parasites have integrated so completely with their nervous systems that removing them would cause brain death." Jake felt despair creeping into his thoughts. How could they help people who did not even remember that they needed help? The emotional projection techniques that had worked on the other worlds would be useless here. But Lyra suddenly straightened, her skin brightening with an idea. "Jake, what if we do not try to remove the parasites? What if we try to restore the memories instead? How would that work? The bond between us allows us to share memories and emotions. What if we could use that same connection to give these people back their lost selves?" Dr. Kim looked skeptical. That would require creating bonds with thousands of people simultaneously. The strain on you and Jake would be enormous. Jake felt Lyra's determination through their connection. She was willing to risk everything to help these people, even if it meant exhausting herself completely. We would not have to do it alone, Jake realized. All 6 bonded pairs working together, sharing the load. We could create a network of connections that reaches everyone in this facility. Dr. Stonepath stared at them. "You would risk your own minds to restore ours?" Lyra's voice was firm and clear. "That is what healers do. We take risks so that others do not have to suffer." The plan they developed over the next several hours was the most ambitious thing any of them had ever attempted. Each bonded pair would connect with a group of infected people, using their enhanced empathic abilities to restore lost memories and emotions. But they would need something to work with. Dr. Stonepath led them to the facility's memory storage center, where the planet's people had kept records of their lives in crystalline databanks. If we can connect the infected to their stored memories while projecting the emotional bonds they have lost, we might be able to restore their sense of self, Lyra explained. Jake felt both excitement and fear through their bond. The plan might work, but it would require them to open their minds completely to thousands of strangers. They could lose themselves in the process. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked Lyra quietly. She took his hand, her skin glowing with love and determination. "I am sure that these people deserve a chance to be themselves again, and I am sure that together we can give them that chance." Jake looked around at the other bonded pairs. Each couple was having their own quiet conversation, weighing the risks against the potential to help. One by one, they all agreed. As they prepared for the most dangerous healing attempt they had ever tried, Jake held Lyra close and felt their bond pulse with shared courage. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said. "Always together," Lyra replied.